So what is a function? Well, a function is like a factory. So you have some sort of raw material here. It could be stones or wood. You throw it into the factory processes it and outputs something more refined, something transformed based on the raw material. Now in mathematics, we refer to a function as f of x. You have some sort of independent variable x. You work it into the f of x, and f of x spits out a y, some sort of output. This is what a function is. Some sort of input produces some sort of output. Now in JavaScript, we have three types of functions. This video is going to cover the first two. We have the traditional function, and then we have the arrow function. The third type is anonymous, but we won't get into that. We have traditional and we have the arrow function. So what is a traditional function? The basic syntax of a traditional function is the function keyword followed by the function name. The function name can start with a letter or a $sign or an underscore, but it can't start with a number, and of course it can't be you can't name your function, so it can't be any sort of reserved Java keyword. It can't be let, can't be var, can't be const like that. And so the function keyword followed by the function name followed by the parentheses, the parameter listings, and then the function code block. Now let's make this function actually do something. Let's name it say hello like this. So all our function is going to do is going to log out hello to the console. So now when you run the function, we get hello. Now let's let the function take on some parameters. The parameters are the input. The parameters are the raw materials here like this. So the input for the function. So our function is going to take two parameters. Let's say first name and last name. And we'll have a default value for these. So you can have default values for your parameters. So if the user doesn't enter a first name, we'll give them the first name of John. If they don't enter a last name, we'll give them a last name of Doe like this. And now when we call the function without any sort of parameter listing, very quickly, I forgot to use it. Let's use it here. So when we use these parameters, when you define these variables, you're defining parameters. When you use them in the function block, you don't call them parameters, we refer to them as arguments. So parameters and arguments, they're the same thing, it just depends on which way you're looking at it. And so we define parameters like this, but we use arguments. So let's say hello, and then we'll just say f name, and we'll say L name like that. And now when we call the function, we get say hello. No, we're not passing in any arguments. So we get hello John Doe. Let's pass in some arguments. We'll pass in Rex, and then we'll pass in tungsten like that. Now we get hello Rex tungsten. So let's have our function return something. So now we have a function with a function name, has some parameters, some sort of input, some sort of raw material. Now we need some sort of output, something more refined or something based on the input. We use the keyword return for that. So like this. If there's no return, the default return is on the right here. It's undefined. Let's have our function return a random employee ID. We're going to use the math library, the sealing method, which just rounds up to the nearest integer, and we're going to produce a random number between 1 and 0. We're going to multiply that number by 25, so we get a number between 0 and 25, just like that. And we're going to return that random employee ID, just like that. Return EID. And now when we run the function, no parameters or no arguments, we get hello John Doe, and the random number is 14. Now because we're programming in this read evaluate print loop, it prints out 14, but normally it wouldn't give you 14. You have to actually capture the return value. So we'd have to do something like this. Employee ID is equal to say hello, and we'll say Rex T like that. And now employee ID is equal to 19 like that, a random employee ID. And so this is the basic traditional function. The function keyword, the function name, the parameter listing with defaults if you want defaults, and the ability to return something based on, it doesn't even have to be based on the input, but we have it returning a random employee ID here. Now let's transform this guy into an arrow function. We'll go step by step just like we did with the traditional function. So the most basic form, the most basic syntax of an arrow function is the function name like that, followed by an equals, followed by the parameter listing, followed by the arrow, and then the code block like that. And so let's transform this guy step by step. So we'll say hello is the name of our function, no parameters, and all it's going to do is say hello to us. Like that. And we call it, works exactly the same. We get hello. Now let's add default parameters. And again, it works exactly the same. So we just copy these parameters here. They happen to be defaults. Like that. And let's take this guy right here, this console.log, place him down there. And now when we call say hello, same thing. Say hello, hello John Doe. If we give it parameters or arguments, rext, we get hello rext. Now let's have it pass back or return that employee ID, just like that. All right. Let's do proper spacing like that. Now let's capture that employee ID. EMP ID is equal to say hello. We'll choose this one right here. rext. Hello rext, and the employee ID is 18 this time. What we can do with an arrow function is we can condense. So let's say we had one parameter. We didn't have two, and we didn't have a default parameter. If you have one parameter and there's no default to it, you can eliminate these parentheses. If there was a default, you'd need the parentheses. But let's just say we have a parameter and there's no default, so they have to give it to us. And let's finish off this guy right here. We'll say hello and Rex, and we get hello Rex, just like that. Now we can condense it even further. If it's only one line of code, just like there's one line or one parameter, no parentheses. If it's one line of code, no curly braces, like that. So you can really condense or compact an arrow function. Say hello, and we'll say Lala this time, like that. And hello Lala. Now how do we return something with a one-liner like this? Well, it's implied that you're returning. So it's implied that this is happening. You don't need it though. In fact, if you do it, there's an error. So let's return the employee ID, but instead of creating the ID like this up here and then returning it, we're just going to return it directly. So we don't need the return because it's implied. And for our one line of code, we're just going to take this guy here like that. So we're going to return the employee ID like that. And let's rename the function to something more appropriate. We're going to say get EMP ID, and there's no parameters for this guy. If there's no parameters, you need the parentheses. You can't do something like that. You need the parentheses if there's no parameters. So now when we run our new function called get EMP ID, and let's capture it properly, let EID equal, we get EID is equal to 13, just like that. And so that's how we transform a traditional function into an arrow function. Now there's a big difference in the use of it, but we won't go into it in that video. I'll do another video on it. And just to give you a hint of what the difference is between a function or a traditional function and an arrow function, it's a difference in scope. But if I did that right now, the video would get way too long. So in the follow-up video, I'll go over the functional difference, why you would use an arrow function over a traditional function. But for this video, I just wanted to show you how do you write a traditional function and how you transform it into an arrow function like this. So give a like, share, comment down below if you have any comments, subscribe if you haven't already subscribed, and I'll see you guys in the next video.